All right. Well, so today we're going to the topic is when our leaders fail, but from the rabbinical perspective, and especially from the Talmud's perspective, it's not quite what you think. Sometimes leaders may try and do something and it doesn't work out, and so the question is like, whose fault is it? What, and it answers some interesting questions. Now, the other thing to know about when you're studying Talmud is a lot of times it's a thing called bookends, where they have a story at the like a story or a Gaddik or midrash at the beginning, and another one at the end. And there's stuff in the middle that may or may not apply to it, and you have to kind of like look through and see where the bookends actually is, so where they are. So it's kind of like what we're going to look at now. It's a specific bookend from Tractate Tanit. Now, this is a section again that deals with fast days, but it's in that particular section of the Talmud that there's tons and tons of stories written, um, interestingly enough. So it's just kind of here. It's it's kind of interesting to kind of see how they work and what they're going to talk about. So the source material is just a little different. It just like shows source one and then source two. And two is from the book of Samuel, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it's also what we're going to do is kind of focus on stories 1, 4, and 7, because those are the actual bookends in this particular story. And the other ones you can kind of read and you'll get different perspectives on that. But I just kind of want to focus on those. So where you see on your sheet, and I'll share the sheet so in case you don't have it at this moment. Very good. So this is from the Talmud to the Tractate Tanit. So we're going to kind of go through different ones, and then I'm going to ask you, some questions. So kind of like, think about, how you would want to answer these as we go through them. So question one, my first thing is, who would like to read number 1 on this in our source 1? Anyone, any volunteers? All right, Ellen, go ahead.
All right. Our Yehuda Nasiya,
R, by the way, is rabbi, just so you know.
oh, okay. Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya ordained a fast. He prayed, but no rain fell. He thereupon exclaimed, "What a great difference there is between Samuel the Ramahite and Yehuda, the son of Gamliel," referring to himself. "Woe to the generation that finds itself in such plight. Woe to him in whose days this has happened." He felt very grieved, and rain fell.
All right, so now you have to understand that during any type of drought, if you remember in the Torah itself, especially the second paragraph of the Shema, which we don't say in Reform liturgy, but is very prominent in Orthodox and conservative prayer books. The second paragraph of the Shema basically says, if you follow God's commandments, you will be rewarded, and you'll get food and water and all sorts of wonderful things. But if you don't follow the commandments, there will be no rain, no food, nothing. So it's very explicit in the second paragraph of the Shema. So it's not a question whether or not God works that way or not. This is what was believed. So that when there was a drought, the rabbis would most definitely institute a public fast. What you need to know is public fasts were not every day. They were a public fast is Monday through Friday. Monday and Thursday from sun up to sundown. So it's basically just 2 days a week. Some rabbis would say do it, for like do a 2-day fast, but they're always sun up to sundown for this kind of fast. But so here, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasiya, this happens to be the rabbi that codified the Mishnah by the end of 200. And he was a very great he was considered a very great scholar. And he says that there's a big difference between him and Samuel, saying, "Woe to the generation that finds itself in such plight." And he refers to Samuel. Now, if you go down at the very end, the last page of your source sheet shows something in chapter 12 chapter 12 in the book of Samuel. And what it talks about is Samuel is like complaining that the people going to Samuel in this book and saying we want a king. This was like right, as Samuel's about to appoint Saul as the first king. So in the book, it says, Then Samuel said to Israel, I have yielded to you in all you have asked of me and set a king over you. Henceforth the king will be your leader. As for me, I've grown old and gray. My sons are still with you, and I have been your leader from my youth to this day. Well, the Lord has set a king over you. Here is the king that you have chosen, that you have asked for. And then he gives a warning. If you revere the Lord, worship him and obey him, and not flout the Lord's command, if both you and the king who reigns over you will follow the Lord your God, well and good. But if you do not obey the Lord and you flout the Lord's command, the house of the Lord will strike you as did your fathers. Now stand by and see the marvelous thing the Lord will do before your eyes. And this is the kind of the interesting part here. It is the season of the wheat harvest. I pray to the Lord that he will send thunder and rain. And then you will take thought and realize what a wicked thing you did in the sight of the Lord when you asked for a king. Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord sent thunder and rain that day, and the people stood in awe of the Lord and Samuel. The people all said to Samuel, Intercede for your servants with the Lord your God, that we may not die. We have added to all our sins and the wickedness for asking for a king. So what they're saying, so let me give you a historical perspective. Once the wheat harvest comes up, which is pretty much towards the end of the rainy season, so talking like February and March, and then it actually goes, the wheat harvest will go into Passover, that'll be harvested during Passover and Shavuot. If the rains come in the wheat harvest, they'll destroy the harvest. So what Samuel did is he says, let's make it rain and over the wheat. And everyone sees that, and then they say, "Oh my God, look at that! We've intercede for us. We have sinned because we've asked you for a king." But by the way, the king is not taken away. The idea is that that God is the ultimate king, and that no human king can change that. That's what the story of Samuel is talking about, and that's what Rabbi Yehuda is saying in this particular case, in the first one, that that's there's a big difference between what happened with Samuel and what happened with me. But he says he felt very grieved and rain fell. Now, why would he felt, why would the rain fall when he was being upset? I know it's kind of a strange question, but he felt very upset, and then all of a sudden the rain falls.
Hmm.
What do you think is going on here?
Not
Well, good.
sure.
What's that?
I'm not sure.
Good. That's good. Let's go to the next one. So I wanted to go to 4. We're gonna go to 4, and let's see what happens here. So remember, we're talking about leadership in this case. So on number 4, who wants to read about Rabbi? Who's that's by the way, how do you pronounce his name, is Rabbi. And see, Ellen, Ellen just wants to read. All right, Ellen, go ahead.
I'll read again. Once Rabbi or
Rabbi.
ordained a fast, and no rain fell. Thereupon, Leapha, some say Rabbi Leafy, stepped in front of
Ilfi, you're right. Ilfa or Ilfi. Go ahead.
stepped in front of the ark and said, He causes the wind to blow, and the wind blew. He causes the rain to fall, and the rain fell. Rabbi then asked him, What is your special merit? He replied, I live in a poor village where there is no wine for Kiddush and Havdalah. I take pains and bring wine for Kiddush and Havdalah and enable people to fulfill their obligation.
So what's happening? Keep in mind, we're talking about leadership. In this particular case, dealing with the drought, Ilfi, who's this character, and again, if towards on the end of it, it actually tells you who these people are. Gives a sense. Ilfi's just is nothing in it's not a major character, so to speak. But when he says the words, and he causes the rain to fall, that's the part that we add in the tefillah. We say, Mashiv haruach u'morid hageshem, or Mashiach Haruach Umarid Hatal, that we ask God for the rain to fall or the dew or the wind to blow. When we say those, we say those words in the tefillah itself. According to Rabbi, he ordained a fast and nothing happened. And then this guy comes up, and every time he says, cause the wind to blow, the wind blows and causes the rain. What's the difference between Ilfi and Rabbi? In terms of leadership, what would you say Ilfi had that Rabbi didn't? Okay, go ahead, Ellen.
He is providing wine and enables people to fulfill their obligation of doing kiddush.
What kind of leader is that?
He's he leads through example and through providing for the people. They couldn't afford it, so he did it. He gave it to them.
What he's doing in this case is actually, you're right about that, but specifically, he is understanding the people's needs. Robbie just sees that there's a drought and he's saying, okay, there's a fast, we have to, no rainfalls, but he isn't as connected to the people as Ilfi happens to be. That's it. That's the big difference. That's the big difference in this particular case.
Can you repeat that, please?
Ilfi's more connected to what the people's needs are than the rabbi or who actually is Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. It's the same rabbi as before. Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi is kind of like the head of the Sanhedrin at this point, and he's actually starting to compile all of these discussions in the Mishnah, which eventually by the year, somewhere around the year 200, it actually gets written down. The Talmud is the thing that gets written down between 200 and 500. Interestingly enough, the Yehuda Nasi, the one who's talking, he lives in Israel somewhere about between 150 and 200, and Ilfi actually comes a couple hundred years later. So it's they're not. It's not like they're sitting around and talking in a. Table. What's that? So they're kind of like, but it's kind of like they're kind of putting these discussions together. But the thing is that the point of this story was that in this case, Ilfi understands some of the needs of the people. Yehuda Hanassi is kind of like up there in a leadership role. He is the leader, but he may not be as connected to people's needs because he's very much into, at this point, putting all these discussions together. That's one of the big differences at this point that he's trying to put in. So they have a different things. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Ilfi is the one who says, I live in a poor village and I bring the kiddush fulfilled, right?
Right.
And the other one's just saying, so he's for the people because he's going to the people, he's helping everybody fulfill a mitzvah. That's what Ilfi's doing. He's actually physically doing work. He's doing the work and he's fulfilling a mitzvah. But Rabbi is just saying, I'm going to make you do a fast.
Basically. And you'll notice the one in the first one, he gets upset. He says that he's grieved and the rain starts. So it's almost like when he realizes that, he's sad and it didn't work, then that kicks in. It's almost like, yes, it's okay to ordain this fast for no rain, but why are you doing it? Are you doing this because you think you're great, or are you doing it because the people actually need the rain? Or in some cases, they don't, you want them to stop raining if it's during the wheat harvest. Ilfi sets the example that the closer you are to the people, the better off you'll be able to accomplish different things. Is an interesting concept. So
can I add a?
Yes, you can add whatever you want.
Yeah, I want to add a personal note. What you said about fasting all of a sudden clicked with me. I had a great grandmother who fasted 2 days a week. Lived to 99, and it was just a story that she fasted 2 days a week, and I had no idea why. In fact, I was named after her, but I had no idea why she did it. And
my guess is it wasn't because of a drought.
But I think it may have been prescribed by the rabbi this is a village in Europe that they weren't getting whatever they needed, and so they might you said it's only 2 days a week that you fast, but that
That will give you
I
something.
guess it isn't so bad for you anyway. She lived to 99.
Yeah, God bless, God
Oh,
bless.
that'll give you something to think about. All right.
Yeah.
Now let's go to the end, because this is another interesting thing in terms of the uh, the leadership role. So it kind of goes like this. Now, Rava, now Rava, keep in mind, he's a fourth generation, we call it generational Babylonian rabbi. He lives about 350 BCE. So, I'm sorry, 350 CE. So he's about four generations after, a couple hundred years after Yehuda Hanasi, and much after Samuel, who probably was around the year 950 BCE. So it's interesting when you kind of look at this, how this kind of works. And the other rabbis, Rab Yehuda, he lives around 200, about 225 to 275. So again, these people are not on this table, but they put these stories together. Rava once decreed a fast. He prayed, but no rain came. The people said to him, when Rav Yehuda ordained a fast, rain did fall. He replied to them, what can I do? If it is because of our learning, we are superior to him. For in the time of Rav Yehuda, all studies were concentrated on Nezikin, one section of Mishnah, the law of damages, whereas we studied all 6 sections of the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda reached the passage of the Mishnah of if a woman was preserving vegetables in a pot, or at some say the passages, if olives are preserved together with their leaves, then the leaves are not susceptible to uncleanliness. He exclaimed, I see disputations of Rav and Samuel. Yet today we teach tractate Ugzin in 13 different sections, i.e., we spend more time delving into each law. And when Rav Yehuda removes one shoe, rain fell, but when we cry out the whole day, no one pays attention to us. Is it because of some failing? If so, anyone who knows of it, declare it. What, however, can the great men of the generation do when their generation does not appear good enough? This is a kind of a lot of interesting little things here. First of all, what do you see as the difference between Rava and Rabbi Yehuda? Do you see any difference there? And like I said, we're talking about 200 year span of time, 200 to 300 year span of time. But what's the difference? What is Rava's excuse thinking? Well, wait a minute, my prayer should work. Why? What did Rava do that Yehuda didn't, or what did Yehuda do that Rava?
What are the laws of damages? Nezikin.
Nezikin?
Yeah, that's what he concentrates on.
You're kind of starting some of it now with Sanhedrin in the rabbi's class and Rabbi Mass class. Law of damages is very simple. But if an ox gores you, if you find a lost object, if you steal an object, those are damages. If someone breaks your arm, what's the not to pay the medical expenses, but what's the damages in terms of embarrassment, medical fees, and things of that sort. So that's what the law of damages are. It's irrelevant what they're studying, but what's not relevant, what is relevant is how much they're studying. Rav Yehuda only studied one section, according to Rava, yet Rava apparently studied the entire section, very detailed. Therefore, he says, I'm smarter than everybody.
Yeah.
I'm so smart that what I say is, should happen, but it doesn't. It doesn't. Let me see. I know Parker put a comment in there. Maybe they shouldn't be comparing so much because everyone leads differently. If you constantly compare to one another, I gotta get rid of this thing. You don't give someone the chance to offer a new path that could potentially be better. If not better, at least get the same results. Okay. Parker, the one thing you don't, they are always comparing. This is a standard. This is very standard, especially if you think of it as the bookend. Like if the bookend for the first one we read and this one, this is the bookend. So there's an interesting concept here. If I don't know how many of you ever watched the movie Clash of the Titans. Hold on. I know that's why they're constantly arguing. Yep, you got it. in the Clash of the Titans, there's a wonderful statement that says, attitude is a leadership. Attitude is leadership. And, if your attitude is I'm smarter than everybody else, your leadership style is going to be very different than someone who is, as Ilfi was, close to the people. You have a different perspective. If you're way up here and you think that everything you're doing is perfect because you think you're smarter than everybody else, then could be the results are not going to be as good as those people that are on the ground, so to speak. There's a lot of people love to get involved in different political issues. Personally, the ones I like happen to be more grassroots, because the closer you are to, on the ground, I think the more you get, more the opportunity to get things accomplished. It's not always, but I think at least it's a good way to start, if nothing else. The interesting thing is that it also shows a great little concept. Time, a leader may not be correct for the time, but the time may be correct for a leader, or may not be. In other words, a leader could come out, but maybe at the time that they're coming may not be the best time for them. Or could be correct for a leader. There are a lot of leaders that we've seen come up that for whatever reason, it just doesn't work. For whatever reason, things don't happen the way that they would think they were. And then the leader will come up at a possibly, that we don't think is a great leader, but then the times kind of make it so that maybe things work out. It's always
Like
question.
Trump,
What's that?
like Trump right now.
Well, personally, yeah, that would be one way of looking at it. I also look at it from think of the Carter administration. At the time, everyone was like, they weren't quite sure about him, even during the presidency. It wasn't 100%, he wasn't completely successful in what he wanted to do. Years later, we look back at the time, and we see that, maybe some of the things that were being done maybe were correct. I mean, you can go through the same thing with almost any of our leaders, and because hindsight's a great tool. But when you look at like what makes someone a good leader, what makes someone something successful in terms of leadership, and the Talmud itself is very explicit about this. If you're close to the people, you'll get more accomplished. Leadership also has an interesting dynamic. It's not just leaders between the leader and the person. There's something about God in there. And it's not so much, and if you go through the Tanakh, you go through our Bible, and when you read the scriptures, you find out that the only ones that are written up are the real good kings. If you followed God, you're a good king. If you didn't follow God, you're a bad king. Jeroboam was a bad king. A number of them were bad kings. King Omri, historically, back up. We go to the Rosetta Stone, the original Rosetta Stone. If any of you actually want to know what was on it, there are two stories. And one story is about the battle between the Hittites and the Israelites. On the Rosetta Stone, the Hittites win. In the book of Prophets, in the book of Chronicles, when you read about King Omri, you find out that the Israelites won. Now, granted, victory is, written by this, history is written by the victors. But in this case, I find it to be really interesting. The reason why does Omri win was, did he have a better army? No, because he tried to keep, he was trying to keep God in the process, whatever. Or he was thinking that that was his way of dealing with the people, feeling close to them in some way, being able to deal with their, with their needs, adding that part that's kind of spirituality to the mix. So that made him a good king. Again, you go through all the different, things. There's very little about whether it's good or bad. Solomon doesn't come out to be a good king. He's good at the beginning. He's not so great by the end. And so there's a lot written to him about him at the end, but I mean, then it kind of like peters off a little bit, that it wasn't as great as all of that, even though he builds the temple. So it's kind of, I find it to be fascinating that sometimes a leader isn't correct for the time, and sometimes the time's not correct for the leader, or vice versa. But I think it's fascinating that this was recognized like 2,000 years ago. And I think, and this is by the leaders themselves who recognize it. Yeah, Ellen, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I, I certainly, agree with, what you're saying about the times, but the ability to bring rain by praying,
That's
I,
the connection to God.
I, and blaming the guy who doesn't bring rain, saying he didn't do it right or he isn't a good person.
I think the
I,
standards.
I don't see that. I really don't believe that is at all valid. I mean, how can you bring
Really?
rain? I mean,
According to the Torah, you have the opportunity. If you follow God's laws, you'll have rain and food and stuff.
that's where I don't believe we have the power to do that. To if there's a drought, it's caused by all kinds of things.
You mean like climate
Not
issues and stuff?
necessarily because the person didn't do something, the leader didn't do it right, or because he was crying.
But you're putting your beliefs, which I'm not disagreeing with. You're putting your beliefs and judging the people 2,000 years ago who did believe very much so that there was this connection between God and people. And
there's definitely a connection between God and people, but I don't know about rain and droughts. Whether
where else
where else
does God interfere?
Oh,
Oh, Angela. Yes.
Thank you. They say that intention plays a focus on the atoms outside and inside the body. So, if for nothing else, scientifically, what I understand is that your attention can actually change the molecular structure of things. And they've proven that in subtle things such as water with Mikuri Osi, I don't know his name, but the Japanese doctor, the very renowned Japanese doctor who did the ice stuff with words, And
he did
anyway,
what did he do?
You're gonna have to look it up. I'm not gonna go in, but
so it's intention. So yeah.
Essentially, you have the power to disrupt certain things in within nature that we have that power, so to speak. Whether regardless of whether or not you want to accept that, and I think a lot of that is true because I think there are a lot of things that we don't understand that we just kind of poo-poo off and leave it at that. But that's
So if you do a rain dance, does it really? I mean, the Indians did rain dances.
if you believe
Does it?
if you believe it, that whether it works or not, if it doesn't work, it's because something that was done wrong. If it does work, something was done right. Yeah. Keep something in mind. In the year at the year like 164 BCE, during the Hanukkah Wars, there was this big issue about whether they should have redo the temple or not. And when they finally redid the temple, and then the second temple came about, there was an interesting excuse me, and this is where these people come from. Keep in mind, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi grew up during the Second Temple period. On Sukkot, they would have this big ceremony where they would take water and pour it in a vat, and they would take water in one vat and wine in another vat, and would pour it in, and would come to us like a single bucket down and below, almost looking like the ovarian tubes of a woman. So it was a fertility act. Did it work? Yeah, because a lot of women got pregnant afterwards. Now, if you're going to argue the fact that they all probably got a little drunk and all had sex afterwards, one could argue that. I mean, it's interesting how in the Bible, there's all these women that can't have children, and as soon as their husband and them have sex, bingo, they get pregnant. All right, is that miraculous? We'll leave it up to you. The point is that we do have the belief was that we were able not to control nature, but we could be rewarded or punished because of what we did through nature. In other words, how would God punish us and without except during the physicality of rain, weather, whatever like that? It's not a question of did the Red Sea split? The issue is that transference from slavery to freedom is more important. Yes, the sea split, it probably was wonderful. Did it happen? I don't know. I can't prove it to you because I don't have any, because none of us have physical proof. But these people really believe that there was that connection. Whether or not we accept that or not is something that I know is kind of hard, but doesn't necessarily mean that it didn't happen. Again, what's a good leader? According to this, one who's closer to the people, who know the people's needs, who understand them, and doesn't just say, I'm right, because of all the things they've studied. They're actually down on the ground, literally helping the people. Ellen, last comment, because I'm gonna.
Yeah, I certainly believe the positive side of it, but the guilt, bad things happen because I did something wrong. I don't really want to look at that as truth. If you forget to do something, and a bad thing happens, or if you don't want to, I don't really want the guilt. I know I got that guilt. I was at the JCC talking to Israelis, and they were insisting that I needed a mezuzah on every door of my house, or something bad was going to happen. And I don't have, I have a mezuzah on the front door, but on every doorway, and I don't.
Yes, the specific law of mezuzah traditionally is every door in the house.
Right, but a bad thing is going to happen because I didn't follow this.
Believe it.
That's what?
If you believe it.
If I believe it, but I don't.
My mother was very superstitious. We had tons of salt and spit all over the house. Salt throwing.
So
my
cute.
God, it was good.
Yeah.
They were always like amazing. And my grandmother had us wearing garlic. Do you
think it really made things better?
I think the salt and spit does. I guess I do.
I'll leave that up to you folks, but it's 12:30, so I'm gonna end this because I'm gonna take advantage of everybody's time, and I will see you next week, folks.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Parker, you're right. I know there's a place that split, there's seas that they say split, but the question is not whether it can happen, but whether like it happened as the story had related. But we'll go back later. Talk to you folks soon. Take care. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.